What's interesting is we have digital breadcrumbs and we have, 14 seasons of The Apprentice to study him and then look at him now. Give us the phrase again that you called it. Was it phenol something?
Phonemic paraphasias.
Phonemic
where he uses sounds that aren't really words. There's also a semantic paraphasia where you use a real word but in the wrong context, like saying the oranges of the investigation when he meant the origins of the investigation.
Right, although I promise you I do that too, and I'm hoping I don't have dementia. What is it in the brain that is sort of disintegrating, if you like? Is this just a symptom of old age, or is it actually something in the brain no longer working as it used to?
Yeah, it's not just a symptom of old age. This is really a breakdown it's actually a breakdown in all of the mental functions, in thinking, in psychomotor performance, in impulse control. So we're seeing this in all areas of his life. Now, of course, with him, sometimes it's hard to tell because he has this severe personality disorder. He is a malignant narcissist.
So is the personality disorder, did that come before the dementia?
Absolutely. Absolutely. No, he's been a malignant narcissist his whole life. A personality disorder is a lifetime disorder. So, when he was 10 years old, he was throwing rocks at babies in the neighborhood. I mean, he's always been this malicious, malignant person. So that's core to who he is, and that's what makes him so dangerous and untreatable. Now, on top of that, this really is the worst case scenario.
Well, hold on. You're throwing so many things out there. He's untreatable. He was throwing rocks as babies. I'm assuming you meant that metaphorically.
No, literally, he was throwing rocks at babies.
Well, is that a story about him, that he was literally throwing rocks at babies?
Yes. When he was a child, there was a baby's neighbors was a neighbor baby. He was throwing rocks at them.
Okay, I didn't know that story, and that certainly does seem like a symptom of some sort of personality disorder. Please continue, and then let's come back to how one treats something like this.
Malignant narcissism is untreatable. That's the official position. We can't cure people who are this sick in this way. But also, it makes him incredibly dangerous. Every one of the great dictators has more or less been a malignant narcissist. The term was invented by Erich Fromm, who himself escaped the Nazis, to explain the psychology of Hitler. And other dictators like Hitler. He understood Hitler to be one of a type, maybe the most extreme, but one of a type. So that's what we're starting out as a baseline. But now what we have is this chronic organic deterioration from his own baseline. So we have, in a sense, the worst of both worlds, because his judgment was always bad. He was always impulsive. He was always a liar. But now he really is losing his ability to think clearly, to plan, to understand things, and to inhibit his speech and his behavior. So, 1 minute it's 400% tariffs on this country. The next minute he forgets all about it. It's much more chaotic and impulsive. And because the people around him are exercising no restraint, he's now got a cabinet of enablers, right? There's nobody to kind of rein him in, either in terms of his worst authoritarian impulses, but even in terms of his confusion. If you saw the recent cabinet meeting where the cabinet was falling all over each other to praise the dear leader and talk about how he's changed American history and he should win the Nobel Prize, the ironic thing is that as he's increasing his grip on power, he's actually losing his faculties.
As you say, we've seen him in plain sight for the last 40 years, so we can definitely see his change. I think even in the presidency this time round, you can see physical changes. He's slowing down, which is not unexpected in a man of 79. And he still seems to have an astonishing schedule. I mean, he's traveling. I mean, I was watching him with King Charles as they gave their speeches side by side. Is King Charles also a narcissist? I mean, here was someone who was born to power. Donald Trump has been elected to power. King Charles hasn't been. What is the difference between them? And in Donald Trump's defense, not 3 words I often say, but he appeared to deliver his speech at Windsor Castle playing to the crowd. He could obviously feel the energy in the room. He had a couple of asides which made people laugh. So it didn't feel like he was detached from the reality around him as he sat with Tim Cook and Satya Nadella and Mark Benioff, and of course King Charles and Queen Camilla, and the unusual sighting of Melania by his side. So can you just talk to... You mentioned that people with dementia go in and out, as it were.
Absolutely.
And then what's the difference between his narcissism and someone like King Charles, who was born to take over a throne?
There's a big difference between narcissism and malignant narcissism. A malignant narcissist, in addition to being a narcissist, which, as you point out, maybe most or even all politicians are to a certain extent, or else they wouldn't run, it has three other components: psychopathy, which means that he has no conscience, that he breaks laws and norms and lies and has no regrets, has no anxiety, has no remorse, has no empathy for other human beings. Paranoia, which is why he feels like such a victim and he feels persecuted, even though he's the one who's doing the persecuting, and demonizes minorities, demonizes people who oppose him. And the fourth component is sadism, that he takes enormous pleasure. He relishes in harming and degrading and debasing and frightening other people. So Fromm called it the essence of evil. So not all narcissists are evil. I wrote a book about Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton is very narcissistic, but I happen to think Bill Clinton is a very benign character. He has a great deal of love and concern for people. He radiates a lot of love, and Donald Trump does have some charm and some charisma, but he exercises it in this very destructive way. Bill Clinton saved hundreds of millions of lives in Africa after his presidency, just because he wanted to. So we're talking about very different types of characters who have some traits in common. I also think they also have some hypomania in common, just to make things more complicated. So Trump has a lot of energy, as you pointed out. I think, and I wrote my book about Bill Clinton saying that he also had hypomania. Hypomania being Greek, hypo is for less than, so it's less than full-blown mania. It's more of a personality temperament to have hypomania. But for Donald Trump, he's up, in the middle of the night, hate tweeting, 20 tweets a night, so all of his energy is going into his evil. But we are talking about someone who is truly evil, and therefore that's one of the reasons that he's untreatable.
So, and can we just include King Charles in this? Because looking at the two of them, they're two old white men, one who's been elected to power, one who's been born to power. Did you see any... I'm not asking you to be critical of King Charles. I was just interested in the juxtaposition of the two leaders together.
Yeah. Well, I mean, to put it simply, I don't see any evidence that he's relentlessly evil.
Well, that's a relief. I'm sure that's a relief. But for the monarchy, they have other problems. They have other problems. But he seems a benign king. I mean, he certainly seems to want to unite the country. Okay. So this going in and out of dementia, what is that about? And is it connected to what we've been told is his chronic venous interruption and the sort of the physical symptoms that we're seeing now?
There's a number of physical symptoms that we're seeing. One of them I point out is his chronic falling asleep. I'm a senior citizen. I fall asleep sometimes at home and after a beer or in the evening. But he fell asleep most of the days during his criminal trial, which is literally unheard of. It never happens that people fall asleep while they're in the dock during their own trial. It certainly doesn't happen every day of their trial. He fell asleep at the finals of the U.S. Open, where he was being cheered and jeered by thousands of people. He fell asleep there at Windsor Castle, apparently. So this inappropriate falling asleep, it's a small thing, but it is a real meaningful sign. The other thing is his psychomotor performance has gotten worse, but in a very specific way that's worth focusing on. This is actually a sign of a specific type of dementia, frontotemporal dementia, and one of the dementia experts that I've consulted with is convinced he has frontotemporal dementia because of this symptom alone, which is, it's called a wide-based gait. But if you look at his right leg, sometimes he just swings it in like a dead weight in a semicircle. And if you saw that footage where he met Putin at the airport, and they came down the red carpet, and some people sort of sped it up like a kind of Benny Hill sort of takedown.
Right.
You see him weaving across the carpet like a drunk driver. If you actually take that same footage and slow it down, what you see is the reason he's weaving to the left is because his right leg is swinging this wide swing to the left, which is causing his whole gait to move in that direction. We have a lot of different pieces of tape where we see that wide-based gait. And the expert that I consulted with said this is what we call pathognomonic. You don't see this in anyone unless they have frontotemporal dementia. So it's a very specific symptom that really an expert would understand the significance of. And of course, now we're seeing a more general deterioration. He seems to have clearly serious circulatory problems. We don't know if the venous deficiency is really, the chronic venous deficiency is really the story. It might be actually heart failure. With the swollen ankles, and we don't know why he's got black marks on the back of his hand, probably getting some kind of intravenous fluid. But the other thing is he just looks like he's sort of falling apart. And the other thing is, a lot of people are predicting that he's having a series of mini strokes because if you saw him at the 9/11 memorial, half of his face was drooping like this. And that's not something that comes with age or fatigue. I can't even do it, right? I'm trying to make half of my face droop. I have to pull it down. It's not something you can just do or something just happens. It really is suggestive of some kind of potential mini stroke. So all of these things could be related, right? The circulatory problems could be related to the deterioration in his brain. They could even be causal, or he could just have both dementia and some chronic medical problems. We don't know. This is really an area where we're really not sure, but he's clearly deteriorating mentally and physically.